Let me ask you a question. Can you make X the subject of this equation? For many students, this topic feels confusing. Which side should I move? Do I add? Do I subtract? Or why does the sign suddenly change? Hello everyone, welcome to Ocean Cafe. Today I'm going to show you a simple trick that helps my students remember easily, which is the Mafia Method. So let us first understand the story. Now don't worry, there is no complicated formula to memorize. Just imagine every equation here has a mafia boss. Now who is the most important person over here? Well, it is none other than the boss, alright, which is X. Now, so making X the subject simply means that X must be alone. So over here, just remember, if you are a mafia boss, so what you do is you stay and the rest all has to go. So if X is the mafia, then therefore X will stay and everything else go. So basically, X must be alone. Beside the story, we also need to understand some basic rule. So this is the reverse operation table that all of you need to be very familiar with. So what we need to know is, if in the original equation it is a plus 7, so after we move, we will need to reverse the operation. So this will give us negative 7. So similarly, if it is minus 7, I reverse the operation, this will give me plus 7. Likewise, if it is multiplied by 7, reversing it will give me divided by 7. And lastly, if it is divided by 7, reversing it, this will give me multiplied by 7. So this is the one rule that we will need, all right, when we apply the mafia story. So let us crack the code now. So in this equation, 4x plus 7 equals to y. The very first question that we need to ask is, who is the boss? So boss is our x. So as we heard earlier on, if x is the boss, so therefore boss will stay, everything else have to go. But then the question is, who to go first? All right, so therefore, here I would like to introduce two other people that you need to know them well. So the very first one is the runner. So runner, if the same side of the equation, so runner will have to go. And the other person that will have to go, which is what I call the bodyguard. So 4 is the bodyguard simply because 4 is the number that it is stick to the bodyguard. So runner and bodyguard, who to move first. So just remember, runner will always be the first to go. All right, so to go, it simply means I will have to apply the reverse operation. So over here, what we see is a plus 7, which means if I'm going to move this away to the other side of the equation, so reverse the operation means from plus 7, it has to become minus 7. So to do this, this will give us 4x equals to y minus 7. So after remove the runner, so what we need to do is we need to remove the bodyguard. So again, what I have here is 4 times x. So the operation that we have it here is a multiplication. So it's 4 times x. So therefore, what we need to do is reversing it. This will give us divide. So which means to find mafia, so we will have y minus 7 divided by 4. So over here, I found the boss and I am able to make x as the subject. Let us take a look at another example. So over here, we have 3x minus 2y equals to 8. So who is the boss? So if I'm going to make x as the subject, then x is the boss. So if x is the boss, so therefore x will stay and everything else has to go. So what we need to know is also who is the runner. So in this case, runner is minus 2y. All right, this is on the same side of the equation. Then after knowing who is the runner, I also need to know who is the bodyguard. So in this case, 3 is the number that is just next to the boss. So therefore, 3 is the bodyguard. And remember, we talked about it earlier on. Runner has to go first, followed by bodyguard. So therefore, in this case, I will have to move runner to the right-hand side of the equation. And the operation that we have here is minus. So therefore, reversing the operation, this will give me plus 2y. So therefore, I will get 3x equals to 8 plus 2y. So now that the runner is on the right side of the equation, we are ready to move the bodyguard. So this is 3 times x. So again, it is multiplication. So reverse the operation. This will give us divide. So which means I will have x equals to 8 plus 2y divided by 3. So again, over here, I have already made x as the subject. So Mafia is found. Here is the next example. We have y equals to 4 plus 3x. Do take note, now x is on the right-hand side of the equation, but everything else is still the same. So we will just apply the steps that we have learned so far. So we want to make x as the subject. So again, who is the boss? So boss here is x. So if x is the boss, that means x stay, everything else go. So who else do we need to identify? We need to identify the runner. And who is the runner over here? Runner is 4. And then who is the bodyguard? The bodyguard is the number that is next to the boss, right? So therefore, the bodyguard is 3. So what we need to do is, remember, we want to move the runner first, followed by the bodyguard. So which means we will need to move 4. And what is the operation for 4? All right. The operation in front of 4, there's nothing here. It simply means it is a plus. So it's a plus 4. Reverse the operation, which means this will give us minus 4. So which means once I move, this will give us y minus 4 equals to 3x. After we move the runner, so what we need to do is we need to move the bodyguard. So again, over here it is 3 times x. So by removing the bodyguard, we will have divide, isn't it? So therefore, this will give us y minus 4 divided by 3 equals to x. So you notice that now the boss is on the right side of the equation. So you can simply leave the answer here, or if you want to, you can just rearrange it and to write it as x equals to y minus 4 divided by 3. So both answers are acceptable. This is the last example that I'm going to show all of you over here. Now, and this equation, it looks a little bit different, all right, but the questions still remain the same. So the very first question that we have to ask ourselves is, who is the boss? So in this case, we are going to make x as the subject, so therefore x is the boss. So again, if x is the boss, x will stay and everything else has to go. So once we know that, that means we have to identify the runner and the bodyguard. But if we take a look at the equation carefully, is there runner? So you notice that on the same side of the equation of the mafia, there is no other term. So which means over here, there is no runner. So you don't need to think about it. But do we have bodyguard? Yes, we do have. All right, so the bodyguard that we have here is actually half, right, which is 2 over here, which means it's x divided by 2. So again, over here, if it is divided by 2, that means I have to reverse the operation. This will become multiply. So what we need to do now is we want to move the bodyguard. So move the bodyguard. So by moving the 2 from the denominator to the other side of the equation, so this will give us 2a. So therefore, 2a is equals to x, or I can simply rearrange it to put the boss on the left-hand side. So this will give us x equals to 2a. So again, both answers are acceptable. Today, you have learned one very important idea. That is, when changing the subject means you simply need to find the boss. And once you have identified the boss, what you need to do is you have to move everyone else away, which is the runner and the bodyguard. All right, and in the process of doing so, remember to reverse the operations. Now here are the 4 examples that I'm giving you here. So you may want to pause the video and give it a try and see if you are able to find the boss over here. And remember, boss stays and everyone else moves. Whenever you see an equation like this, don't panic. Just ask yourself, who is the boss? So if you can remember this simple story, you will find changing the subject much easier. But what happens when the boss has friends on both sides? This time, there are 2 x's. So which one should stay and which one should move? So that is where we need the maths detective over here that is joined in the investigation. So in the next video, we will learn how to deal with variables on both sides using the same simple idea. Hope you find this video useful. Do like and subscribe if this helped you. I will see you in the next video. Bye.